As the world outside quiets down, something older begins to stir. Not with a bang or a beep or the vibration of your phone on the nightstand, but with something slower, something quieter, a drip, then another, the faint sound of water slipping into stone. Strict codes. You're not just falling asleep, you're falling back in time into the sacred hush of the Andes Mountains, where people once measured the cosmos not with gears or ticking hands, but with the stillness of a pool and the patience of a priest. Tonight, you're heading into the world of the Inca, an empire of heights and hushes where time was a liquid thing. It pooled in carved bowls. It sparkled in sunlit reflections. It didn't rush. It didn't tick. And it definitely didn't apologize for not being digital. Strict codes. And here's your nightly reality checking if you were an average citizen in the Inca Empire. Strict codes. You wouldn't be checking your wristwatch. You wouldn't even know what second was. You'd be farming by the shadow of a stone pillar or waiting for the solstice reflection to hit a ceremonial mirror. And if the water didn't drip right, your whole harvest might be off. No pressure. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. Strict codes. It's fun seeing who's drifting off from where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hymn, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk a narrow trail, cut into the mountainside, the wind gentle but sharp with altitude. The air is thin here. Everything feels just a little more sacred. Stone walls rise around you, dry-fitted and so precisely aligned that not even a credit card could slip between the seams. But you're not here to marvel at architecture. You're here for something even quieting the sound of time without sound at all. Ahead, a carved stone basin. Shallow, worn, purposeful. A little trickle of water feeds into it from a channel in the wall. The bowl is full, but not overflowing. The water is clear, reflecting the sky above. A tiny breeze ripples the surface, and just like that, the reflection bends. The sun winks. This is your clock. Codes. This is where time starts, not with ticking, but with the careful interaction of earth, water, and sky. Historians still argue whether the Incas truly invented clocks, in the strict sense. After all, there were no clock towers in Cusco, no gears turning in wooden boxes. But what they did create were systems. Rituals. Devices that measured not the minute, but the moment. Not the hour, but the harmony between human and cosmos. The name of this place isn't even agreed upon. Some call these water features patches, ritual conduits for water offerings. Others see them as part of an agricultural calendar. And some, honestly, just say, "Hop fancy fountains." And while you're lying there half drowsy, maybe that's the best answer of all. Now, picture the setting. High above the modern hum of cities, the Andes cradle you in rugged arms. The terrain is steep, the skies piercing. It's not just dramatic, it's cosmic. The Inca considered their empire the center of the universe, with Cusco at its heart, laid out like a puma. Yes, a giant feline. Naturally. You reach another basin, this one shaped slightly different. Deeper, oval. A small channel leads out of it, and just below that, another stone dish. The top one overflows in a controlled stream into the next, and then the next. Time flows downward. Gravity keeps the rhythm. The whole system is silent, but always in motion. And while you're tracing this quiet stream with your eyes, here's a fringe tidbiting. Some researchers believe that certain Incan pacas were designed to bubble or make subtle sounds when a specific seasonal alignment occurred. A kind of whispering alarm clock, if you will. Others think the noise was part of the offering to mountain spirits. The idea that time should make a noise is foreign here. Western clocks yell. They tick, they gong. They ring every hour just to remind you of their existence. Incan timekeeping, on the other hand, just exists. Like a breeze, like the rustling of a field. You only notice when it's off. And that's the secret magic, really. The Incas didn't need time to shout. They needed it to align. When water reflected the sun at just the right moment, that was enough. It told them when to plant, when to fast, when to call the people to the plaza and burn fragrant herbs in quiet reverence to Inti, the sun god. This approach to time wasn't about control. It was about connection. When the water clock showed a solstice, it wasn't just a date on a calendar. It was a signal that the sun itself had fulfilled its promise and returned to its appointed place. Meanwhile, you're sitting there, half asleep now, watching the reflection in the basin flicker again. A bird flies overhead. The shadow breaks the surface. You blink slowly, dreamily, wondering how many people, over how many centuries, have watched this same bowl of water ripple. You're not in a museum. You're in a moment. And in this moment, the silence is the ticking, the drip is the chime, the sun is the dial, no hands, no hours, just harmony. You step away from the water basin and follow the curve of a narrow path, your footsteps muffled by soft tufts of mountain grass. It winds upward, then flattens into a plateau carved into terraces. Ancient farming steps etched with mathematical precision into the mountainside. Each one is like a stair for giants, bordered by stone, holding centuries of soil and sun and ritual. But tonight, you're not here for crops. You're here to find time itself, in the form of Intihuatana, the hitching post of the sun. You reach a large stone platform. At its center rises a squat column, roughly carved yet symmetrical, like a sundial designed by an oracle. You can feel it before you understand it. This isn't just a rock. This is an altar, an observatory, and a calendar all rolled into one. The air buzzes with the hush of altitude, the kind that makes your ears pop slightly, as if time itself is pressing in around you. The Incas believed the Intihuatana held the sun in place. Literally. That without it, the sun might forget its path and wander off into the void. And look, based on how your days go when you forget your charger, that doesn't sound entirely unreasonable. Mainstream scholars agree the Intihuatana served as a solar calendar. On key dates, like the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun casts a shadow that aligns perfectly with the stone, not by accident, by architectural poetry. And here comes your fringe tibbing. Some believe these stones did more than mark solar shifts. They channeled cosmic energy. Energy that priests could tap into during ritual. You might not feel it now, but if your fingertips tingle just a little as you hover over the stonic well, that's just the altitude. Probably. You settle yourself nearby, letting the silence wrap around you. The only sound is the soft whir of the wind and the occasional chirp of something unseen. Below, terraces stretch like layered ribbons. Above, stars blink awake. The Incas believed in duality. Upper world Hananpacheng, middle world K-Pacha, and lower world U-Pacha. And in this moment, it feels like you're standing in all three. Historians still argue whether Intihuatana stones were standardized across the empire. Machu Picchu has the most famous one, but others have been found, some smashed by conquistadors who feared their power. Not metaphorical power, literal. They thought the stones could manipulate the sun. And when you think about it, isn't that what every timekeeping device tries to do? You look at the stone again, no moving parts, no ticking gears. And yet, it marks the year better than most apps on your phone. The Incas didn't need 365 little boxes to check off. Their sense of time was tied to the sky and the soil. When the sun reached a certain spot, it was time to plant maize. When shadows vanished entirely at noon, it was the day of no shadow, considered sacred, a divine pause. That's the thing with Incan time. It's not linear. It loops. It climbs like a staircase and curls like a river. Past and future weren't separate. They were interwoven. You didn't just move through time. You lived within it, like a fish in water. Or like you lying here, halfway between sleep and starlight, letting the slow flow of history wash over you. You glance back at the stone. Its angles are sharp against the softening sky. As the sun finally dips low, the shadows stretch long across the plaza. One of them touches the edge of a ceremonial path, aligned perfectly with another marker. A signal. Time passing quietly. And it's here, in the stillness, that you feel what the Inca priests must felt to awe. Not fear, not urgency, just reverence. Because if you can read the sky, if you can feel the rhythms of the earth under your feet, then maybe you don't need to measure every second. Maybe you just need to listen. Which brings us to the less glamorous but equally vital part of all this, the priests, scientists known as the immortals. They were the keepers of knowledge, the ones who watched the sky, studied water flow, and recorded lunar cycles using quipe strings. They didn't wear lab coats, strict codes. They wore woolen tunics and carried coca leaves in leather pouches. According to some interpretations, these quipu cords might have been used to store calendrical data. Not just accounting tallies, actual date systems encoded in knots and spacing. The kind of calendar you could wear around your neck. Eat your heart out, Google Calendar. The role of the immortus wasn't just intellectual. It was spiritual. Timekeeping was sacred. It wasn't just about when, it was about why. Every solstice marked not just a solar event, but a divine reunion. When the sun returned, so did blessing, so did balance. You stand, stretch your legs, and continue toward a ceremonial stairway. The stones are smooth with yews, worn by centuries of feet walking in rhythm with the heavens. Time here doesn't shout, it whispers. It's not in your face, it's in your feet. And as the stars deepen overhead, and the wind rustles something tall and dry near the edge of the trail, you realizing this whole empire ticked. Just not the way ours does. No seconds, no deadlines. Just alignments and faith, and the flow of water, light, and breath. Time, as the Inca knew it, was alive. Now that your feet have grown used to the feel of ancient stones, and your ears to the hush between highland breezes, you begin to notice it. That slow, persistent trickle, faint as breath, softer than wind. Water. It draws you down another slope, where terraces ripple like green waves under moonlight. You follow the sound. Past a dry shrine, past stones chiseled with symbols no one's fully decoded, you arrive at a low basin where water flows through narrow channels. Channels carved not by nature, but by hand, centuries ago, maybe more. This is no idle stream. You're looking at part of the Inca hydraulic network, an ancient water system that was half plumbing, half philosophy. Here, water was more than hydration. It was time, motion, and cosmic order in liquid form. The Incas were geniuses at water control. You've heard about Roman aqueducts, stone arches and fancy fountains. But the Andes had their own miracle workers. And they didn't have blueprints. They had instinct, observation, and a mountain's patience. The water you're staring at might be part of a ritual bath, or a lunar tracker, or both. Historians still argue whether these fountains were used solely for ceremonial cleansing or if they also timed agricultural events, like when to plant potatoes or when the emperor should get a haircut. Okay, maybe not the last one. Though Incan barbers were definitely a thing. What's certain is that the Incas observed water's behavior obsessively. They watched how long it took to fill a basin, how it curved, pooled, and slipped. They built systems where water ran from one chamber into another at precisely timed intervals. Not seconds or minutes, but enough to measure dawns, dusks, and even solstices. You kneel beside the channel, dip your fingers in. It's cold, clear, almost eerily clean. No sludge, no soap bubbles, just glacial purity. You wonder how many hands have done this exact thing. How many priests, farmers, or maybe nervous messengers have waited here, watching the water as it moved like time itself. Quiet, unstoppable, whispering its secrets. At Tepan, a site south of Cusco, water flows in tiered steps, cascading from pool to pool with such control it puts modern landscaping to shame. Some scholars suggest it was a laboratory for hydraulic engineering. Others think it was more of a spa for the nobility. And then there are the fringe theories that Tepan's system was a giant water clock. It's not as wild as it sounds. If you control the width, slope, and volume of the channels, you can create a reliable delay, enough to signal the passage of time between rituals. Imagine praying for rain while watching water run through a sacred maze, counting your hopes in splashes. And here's your quirky tidbit of the night. One Incan myth claims that certain fountains could hear prayers. If you whispered into the water, it would carry your words to the gods. Try it. Go ahead. Murmur something silly. Please let my boss forget I exist tomorrow. There. Now the stream knows. But there's more. Water didn't just flow through Incan cities. It shaped them. At Machu Picchu, the entire site is laid out with drainage and aqueducts in mind. Not as an afterthought, as the spine of the design. Rainwater is funneled, excess runoff channeled into escape routes, ceremonial fountains perched perfectly to flow from springs higher up the slope. And all this in a place that gets over 70 inches of rain a year. You'd be forgiven for expecting to find mossy puddles and crumbling stairs. Instead, you get dry thresholds and perfectly level stone floors. You shift to a new position, eyes tracing the stone grooves. The craftsmanship is eerie. The angles are precise. No mortar, no cement. Just gravity, stone, and a level of math that most of us flunk in high school. Even the wakas, sacred places, often included water features. Some were natural springs, others engineered channels. Inca priests believed water connected the upper and lower worlds, and that to watch it flow was to watch life and time made visible. Strict codes. Historians still argue whether the channels doubled as calendars or purely ritual paths. But it's hard to believe this much thought went into water management just to keep llamas hydrated. Though, to be fair, llamas are emotionally high maintenance. You watch as the flow picks up slightly. Maybe it's snow melt upstream. Maybe a spirit stirred. Whatever the reason, the stream now fills one basin and begins to overflow into another. A slow, careful cascade, like sand slipping in an hourglass, but wetter. The Incas didn't measure time in moments. They measured it in flows. There's even evidence they aligned some channels with celestial events. A stream might only shine silver under the full moon in August, or cast a moving reflection of the Southern Cross into a waiting pool. You could call it spiritual science, or scientific spirituality. Take your pick. And then there's the language. In Quechua, time isn't just past and future. The word for future kepa literally means behind. The past, orpa, is in front. Because you can see what's happened, but not what's coming. So you walk into the future backwards, guided only by what you've already known. You lean back now, letting the night chill kiss your cheeks. The water flows on. The stars twinkle their approval. Somewhere, a bird calls once, then falls silent. The world feels still, but it isn't. The water proves that. Time is moving, just not loudly, not in ticks, but in trickles. You could sit here forever. And in some sense, people have. For centuries. Pilgrims. Priests. Lamas. Everyone has paused here to listen to water and wait for it to say something about the world, or the gods, or themselves. And maybe, if you're lucky, or just quiet enough, it might say something to you too. You shift your weight from one stone to another. A brushing your fingertips over grooves worn smoother than a whisper. The Inca never wrote with ink and paper. Not like the Greeks or the Chinese, but they left messages all the same. And here, along the channel's edge, it starts to become clear their language wasn't carved or painted. It flowed. Welcome to a world where the clock has no hands, but instead has shadows, water, and starlight. You're now standing on the edge of an Inca Intihuatana, a sacred carved stone whose name translates to hitching post of the sun. And while it might look like an abstract sculpture or the kind of weird garden rock your neighbor would insist is feng shui, this was serious business. The Inca used it to track the movement of the sun with such precision that even today, engineers scratch their heads. The way light falls across its faces during equinoxes and solstices marked the changing of seasons. And according to some interpretations, it wasn't just sunlight they tracked. It was the dance between shadow and water. Historians still argue whether certain carved channels near these stones acted like seasonal indicators or simply added flair to the ritual space. Because, let's face it, if you're sacrificing a guinea pig to ensure good crops, you probably want your altar to look respectable. You tilt your head as moonlight brushes across the top of the stone. At certain times of year, sunlight casts no shadow here. It just stands still, like even the gods needed to catch their breath. Below the Intihuatana, another water channel weaves through terraces, disappearing into a tunnel and re-emerging half a level down. You crouch near the outlet. It's not random. Someone planned this. Someone whose idea of design included celestial math and altitude-corrected fluid dynamics. Here's your fringe fact for the hour. Some believe the Incas used these systems not just to measure time, but to pause it. That's right. The flow could be blocked or redirected to delay the next basin's fill, effectively stopping the clock until the ritual resumed. Not time travel exactly, more like time trickling. You shift slightly and feel the worn edge of a step underfoot, one of hundreds leading to yet another tier of terracing. It's hard not to notice that nothing here is symmetrical in the way modern minds crave. No neat rows, no perfect grids. Yet everything works. Everything aligns. With sunrises, with riverbanks, with mountaintops that glow like fire when dawn arrives. You remember now, earlier, the guide to, or was it your dream, mentioned Sikhs. Invisible lines radiating from Cusco, the Inca capital, like spokes from a hub of a wheel. Each line was a path to sacred sites, including springs, stones, and shrines. Some of these Sikhs may have formed part of a ritual calendar. Not a flat one you hang on a fridge, but a living one you walked. Imagine that, marking your time not with pages, but with footsteps. Birthdays not on a date, but on a place. Your personal new year begins when the sun touches that high ridge, or when the river turns silver in that exact curve. Honestly, try calling out sick with that excuse. Sorry, I can't work today, it's my time pilgrimage. And if you think it all sounds a little mystical, you're not alone. Scholars are still debating how much of this was religious, how much was scientific, and how much was just the Incas flexing their divine design skills. What's not debated is how effective their system was. Crops were planted on time, festivals aligned with seasons. The empire, for a while, ran like water through a perfect channel. You trail your hand along the grooves again and notice the faint shimmer of mica embedded in the stone. Not flashy, just enough to catch the light. Some believe it was a way to visually track water as it flowed. A practical feature, or maybe just decorative. You never know with ancient engineers. Sometimes brilliance comes with a little bling. Another stream curves around the corner, and you follow it, ducking beneath a low arch. Beyond it, a large stone pool reflects the sky. This might have been used as a mirror, reflecting pool not just for aesthetics but for stargazing. On clear nights, priests may have read the heavens by watching constellations ripple on its surface. It's a poetic way to see the future written not in stone, but in sky floating on water. Your foot nudges something. A small round stone, too perfectly shaped to be chance. Perhaps part of a forgotten sundial. Perhaps just a child's game piece. Historians still argue whether the Incas used toys to teach astronomy to their young, or if that's just modern nostalgia projected backward. But come on. What empire doesn't have clever kids sneaking lessons between chores? You're getting sleepy now, aren't you? That steady trickle, the crisp scent of stone and sky. The way the air hums like it's remembering something for you. But still, there's one more feature here you can't ignore. A vertical rock wall. At first glance, just another terrace, but look closer and you see faint spiral patterns etched across its face. Chicana designs symbolizing the Andine cross. 4 directions. 3 levels of the world, the underworld, the living, and the heavens. And right through the center, a hole. Not symbolic. Practical. That's where water once flowed, precisely at noon, casting a beam of sunlight through onto a carved notch below. A light-water hybrid sundial. Who thinks of that? Who carves stone to catch both elements, light and liquid, as they meet at just the right time? You lie back on the nearest step, cold seeping gently through your clothes, grounding you. Above, the stars keep time in their silent arc. Below, the water continues its journey. The past and the future are still flowing, still whispering. No ticking, no tolling bell. Just the hum of stone and water, teaching you that sometimes time isn't a thing you chase. it's something you sit beside. The sun's dipped low now, though of course you don't see it directly. Just the way its golden light lingers on the tips of the tallest ridges, flickering like an old film reel. The air turns cooler, softer. You pull your cloak, or maybe it's just a blanket in your mind, a little tighter, and keep walking. Tonight, you're trailing water's path further still, because what you've seen so far, the fountains, the channels, the terraces, is only part of the picture, the real clockwork of the Andes. It was powered by the stars, but not just any stars. The Inca had their own constellations, drawn not by clusters of shining dots, but by the shadows between them. That's right. Where most cultures saw pictures in the stars, the Inca saw time in the darkness. Take a breath and lie back against the stone ledge behind you. Tilt your gaze to the sky, now blooming in full Andean starlight. There. Can you see it? Near the Milky Way's thickest band, a black void shaped like a llama. Not a star of a loma missing from the stars. The Inca called these dark constellations. The shadow llama, the serpent, the toad, all formed by dark nebulae, those starless splotches you normally overlook. But the Inca didn't overlook anything. They believed these shapes moved across the sky seasonally, and that their positions, combined with the river's reflection, told time more accurately than any sundial ever could. Historians still argue whether these constellations were widely known across the empire or used mainly by elite priest astronomers. What's more certain? That the Inca watched the Milky Way with a devotion bordering on obsession. To them, it wasn't just a starry highway, strict codes. It was a river, a celestial version of their own sacred Vilcanota below. In fact, some scholars suggest that the flow of the Milky Way in the sky mirrored the river on Earth. If the celestial river bent a certain way, so did your expectations for rainfall. And if you noticed the shadow llama drinking from the river's arc in the heavens, it was time to prepare for the rainy season. You smile in the dark. How's that for a weather report? Chance of precipitation this week based on the eating habits of a space llama. Honestly, it's more charming than most forecasts, and possibly more accurate. But the skies were only half the clock. The other half lived here on Earth, on mountain peaks and temple roofs. The Inca were incredible horizon watchers. In Cusco, their capital, there were over 300 sighting points, each lined with a mountain, a star, or a sunrise. These weren't random views. They were carefully curated alignments, like a giant, three-dimensional calendar that stretched across valleys at key times of year, especially solstices and equinoxes. Priests would observe where the sun rose or set in relation to sacred mountains called apus. If it slid behind Mount Orsangate just so, it meant the dry season was beginning. If it crested a notch in the horizon between two smaller peaks, planting season had arrived. Precision, you bet, all without telescopes or Google Calendar. And here's your fun little twisting. Some researchers believe that certain reflecting pools, those clear stone basins you saw earlier, were placed specifically to catch these solar alignments. That way, you wouldn't just see the sun rising behind a mountain. You'd see its light reflected in water, connecting heaven to earth in a single glance. Can you feel it now? The way they blended elements, sky and stone, light and water, not just for beauty but for tracking days. There's a kind of elegance to it, like building a Rolex out of rivers and rocks, and still, the rituals went all solemn sky watching. Some were wild. Take Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, a full-blown celebration at winter solstice, complete with dances, feasts, and offerings that could include, yes, llamas in golden headdresses. Okay, maybe not every llama got the bling, but you get the vibe. During the ceremony, priests would mark the sun's lowest point in the sky, using towers, shadows, and sometimes fires to communicate across vast distances. Some towers even had twin windows, aligned perfectly to catch the sunrise on one day of the year. Not two, not three. One. Still, historians debate whether these towers were part of a pan-Andean clock system or just local observatories. Either way, the level of coordination is dizzying. Imagine sensing sunrises with other cities by lighting fires on mountaintops. It's like ancient fiber optics, but with more altitude sickness. And it wasn't just the Inca elites playing timekeepers. Farmers relied on these sky and water cues to manage their fields. The stars told them when to till. The water channels signaled planting. Even certain birds, like the Andean tinamou, were watched closely. When their mating call echoed across the valleys, it meant the rains were on their way. Yes, they had a bird-based clock too. Your smart speaker could never. You sit up slightly, stretching your back, listening again to the water in the channels below. The sound blends with the wind, and faintly, with your own breathing. Each inhale feels like a rhythm passed down through the centuries. No alarms, no buzzers. Just water and stars telling you what time it is. A soft rustle behind you reminds you you're not alone. Probably just a night bird, or a breeze teasing the brush. Still, it feels fitting. The Inca believed the world was alive, with pacha, or time-space, flowing through all things. Not linear, not static, but a circle, a spiral, a rhythm. Time wasn't something to spend. It was something you moved with, like a partner in a slow dance. And now, under a blanket of ancient constellations, with the cool stone beneath you and the memory of llama-shaped shadows above, you finally start to get it. Time doesn't need to tick. It can trickle. It can shine. It can whisper. And sometimes it looks back at you through the water and says, "You're right where you need to be." So now you've seen the sky and the stones, you've followed the water as it winds, and you've watched time slip by in shadows and reflections. But tonight's journey isn't finished, not even close. Because the Inca didn't just track time for ceremonies or farming. They engineered it into their cities, embedding the calendar into the very bones of the empire. As you wander downhill from the reflecting pools, your feet press into ancient cobbled roads, fitted so tightly that, legend has it, you can't even wedge a blade between the stones. You probably wouldn't try anyway. These roads are older than most nations. They're not just walkways. They're data lines, pulsing with meaning, timing, and connection. And in this next part of the journey, you're arriving in a city where time lives. Tipon. Tipan isn't a household name, not even for most history buffs. It's no Machu Picchu, no Cusco. Codes. But whisper the name to an Andine archaeologist, and you'll see their eyes sparkle. Because Tipan might just be one of the most impressive water temples in the Inca world. And yes, one of the best hidden clocks. You crest a ridge, and suddenly there it is. Tiered agricultural terraces like green piano keys descending into the earth, each one nourished by its own canal. But the showstopper, a carefully controlled set of fountains, still gurgling with spring water after half a millennium. Here, the water doesn't just flow. It performs. It dances from one pool to the next, regulated by carved stone spouts, some narrow, some wide, each controlling the pressure and velocity like some ancient DJ mixing beats. Historians still argue whether Tipan's hydraulic precision was used to mark time, signal religious dates, or simply keep things cool for noble visitors. Maybe all three. The Inca liked their multitasking. You lean in closer. The water makes a delicate, steady rhythm. Soft plinks and burbles like a lullaby written in fluid. It's not loud, not dramatic, but it's constant. And that's the point. One scholar once proposed that these fountains could be early timekeeping devices, where the rate of overflow from one basin to the next marked the passing of hours. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But then again, people once thought ancient Egypt was all pyramids and no plumbing. You trail your fingers through the current. It's cold, clear, almost crystalline. The kind of water that makes your break up and your body say, "No thanks." And yet, in this place, it's sacred. It's the keeper of time. Up on the slope, you notice a strange little stone box. It's tucked away, half swallowed by grass. But inside, a perfect channel zigzags like a tiny lightning bolt. Some believe it was a water filter. Others think it was symbolic, a miniature mimic of the empire's larger canals, maybe even a spiritual model. That's the Inca for Yug. always slipping philosophy into the plumbing. And here's your fringe fact of the night: some of Tippon's water channels are carved so precisely they still deliver a balanced flow between forks. That's right, split the stream into two paths and both get exactly half the water. Even now, even after earthquakes, erosion, and 5 centuries of wear, your sink can't even do that on a good day. The thought tickles you a little. Somewhere in the sacred valley, someone's great add about 20 more greats ancestor looked at a slope and said, "You know what this needs? A gravity-fed symphony." But Japan wasn't all about water. It was about hierarchy.
Timing.
Ceremony. Each terrace had a role, and so did each structure. There were places to live, places to plant, and places where only priests dared go. And time, in this world, was experienced differently depending on who and where. In fact, the Inca didn't think of time as universal. Nope. Time was local, sacred, shaped by altitude, agriculture, and astronomy. In Cusco, you might mark solstice with golden discs and firelight. In Japan, it was the perfect stream splitting quietly at midnight. You walk farther, now at the edge of the city ruins, where a wide channel disappears into the mountain. Some say it's a ritual passage, others say it just drains runoff. But here's the thing. Everything in this empire could be both. The practical and the mystical didn't argue. They coexisted. Like roommates who actually get along. You pause to listen. There's a distant rush now, somewhere below, the sound of water meeting water. Probably a reservoir, maybe a natural spring, or maybe it's the sound of time itself, flowing quietly, unbothered by your calendar app. And as you sit there, one last image comes to you. A lone priest centuries ago, hooded and silent, tracing water with his fingertips under moonlight, not measuring it exactly, just watching, feeling strict codes, understanding its rhythm the way you feel the beat of your own pulse. Because in the end, maybe that's what Incan water clocks were all about. Not seconds or minutes, not even days, but presence, attunement, a way to be in time, not just count it. And if you're quiet enough, if you let go of ticking and talking and all your digital demands, you can almost hear the hour change, not with a chime, but with the soft kiss of water rounding a bend in stone. It's still telling you something, even now. The air shifts a little as you leave Taipan behind. There's a damp coolness in your lungs now, like you've walked through memory itself. And in a way you have. But don't get too cozy just yet. Strict codes. There's more to time than water slipping through stone. Because now you're going higher, into the realm of the Sky Watchers, the keepers of cosmic rhythm. The people who looked up and said, "Sure, let's build an empire with the stars as our co-pilots." Tonight, you're walking into Cusco, heart of the Inca world. Not tourist-laden, modern Cusco. You're stepping into the sacred, the city when it still whispered secrets to the sun. The streets are alive with the rustle of woven tunics, the scent of burning Palo Santo, and footsteps. So many footsteps. Moving to rhythms older than ink. Everything here is measured not by ticking hands, but by shadowfall and sunrise. And in the center of it all, the Coricancha, the Golden Temple. You feel it before you see it, a soft radiant hum that feels like someone lit a candle inside your chest. Coricancha wasn't just any temple, it was the Inca's most sacred space, dedicated to Inti, the sun god. And here's your mainstream fact of the night. Stricts. Its inner walls were once lined with sheets of solid gold, shimmering like trapped sunlight, reflecting so brightly that legend says it could blind you at noon. Sunglasses weren't really a thing, but squinting reverently was probably encouraged. Now imagine this: at each solstice, sunlight would pierce through specially aligned windows and land exactly on a sacred spot, a gold plate, an altar, or a ceremonial object. Time, quite literally, arrived on a beam of light. This wasn't architecture. It was choreography. You trace the path of one of those sunbeams with your fingers now, imagining how priests might have stood waiting, breath held, as the morning touched stone. Not a second too early. Not a breath too late. Some historians still argue whether these alignments were religicals or careful math. Honestly, Probably both. Now for your fringe tidbitting. Coricancha supposedly housed a garden made entirely of gold. That's right. Life-size stalks of maize, birds, butterflies, even llamas, all hammered from precious metals. A whole ecosystem in freeze frame. Not very practical for farming, sure, but fabulous for impressing the neighbors. But this was more than shiny, bragging rights. It was about preserving abundance, embodying eternal cycles. Real corn withers, golden corn never wilts. Time, frozen at its peak, eternal harvest, and the temple itself, it wasn't just built on sacred ground. It was the navel of the empire. Literally, means the word. Cusco means navel. And from this point, 4 great roads stretched outward like arteries, each leading into a different quarter of the Incan realm. The world radiated outward from here, like ripples from a thrown stone. You stand now in that imagined center, twos at the very place where the solstice light might have landed. There's no golden maze here tonight. Just silence. But it's a heavy silence, thick with memory. A priest steps beside you. Just in your mind, don't worry. And he nods toward the ceiling. Time, he whispers, is the journey of the light. Then he's gone, as quietly as he came. Maybe that was your imagination. Maybe that's what the temple does. Now here's something wonderfully weird. Cusco wasn't laid out like a grid or a circle. It was shaped like a puma. Yes, the actual city plan mimicked the form of a giant feline, with Coricancha at the belly, the fortress of Saxahuman forming the head, and the tail curling in the south. Urban planning meets cosmic animal spirit. Your city's zoning department could never. So what does this have to do with clocks? Everything. Because time wasn't just tracked, it was inhabited. The city itself was a sundial, a calendar, a map of sky and soil fused into streets. As the sun moved across the heavens, its shadows traced across Cusco, shifting focus from temple to plaza to mountaintop altar. Each site lit up, then dimmed, like a sequence of lights on a cosmic runway. People knew what to do based on where the light fell. Harvest, mourn, celebrate, make offerings, watch the sky, and when the shadows fell just so, it was time to rest, to reflect, or to listen. Here's where it gets even stranger. Some researchers believe that the positions of stars and the timing of lunar events helped determine royal decisions. When to crown a new emperor, when to go to war, when to launch a great building project. You want to call a meeting. Better check the constellations first. Historians still debate whether this celestial timing was spiritual reverence, clever political theater, or an early form of risk management. But hey, wouldn't you sleep better if your boss postponed meetings until after Mercury stopped retrograding? As you leave the temple, the ancient stones whisper underfoot. Not words, not secrets, just rhythm, a kind of breathing. The city isn't asleep, it's watching, dreaming, pulsing with time. And just like that, you get it. In this world, the calendar wasn't hanging on the wall. It was the wall. The clock wasn't ticking. It was orbiting. And time didn't demand. It invited. You feel the tug of the moon now, rising above the rooftops. Soft, silvery, almost playful. Like it's checking on you. Making sure you're still listening. You are. The moon follows you now as you drift up from Cusco, soft and persistent, like a child tugging your sleeve to show you something wonderful. You don't need a compass. Just trust the breeze, the stars, and your slightly sore feet. You're going north, threading through valleys carved by glacier melt and time, into a place where water doesn't just tell time, it sings it. Welcome to Murray. At first glance, it looks like a crater. Or maybe an alien amphitheater where concerts are played on panpipes made of obsidian. But what you're standing before is a complex of deep, circular terraces carved into the earth like the inside of a coiled shell. Each step down is a drop in temperature, a slow inhale toward the cool belly of the world. Mainstream fact, these concentric terraces weren't built for beauty alone. They were agricultural laboratories. Microclimates. Each level simulates a different altitude, allowing the Inca to test which crops thrived in which conditions. Kind of like a living science fair project with potatoes and guana, Instead of baking soda volcanoes, strict codes. But you're not here for the vegetables, delicious as they are. You're here because this place also mapped the passage of time. Sunlight struck each terrace differently depending on the hour and season. The Incas weren't just watching crops. They were watching the sky, the shadows, the curve of the day. Now imagine a priest standing at the center, arms outstretched, timing his chants with the slant of morning light, each echo bouncing back in perfect sequence. You try it now, just a breath, a whisper, the sound spins and climbs and comes back to kiss your ear. A sonic sundial. Here's your quirky tidbit. Local legend says Moray was once a giant's footprint. That's some celestial being stepped down from the clouds, and the earth simply remembered. Science says erosion and engineering. Myth says divine footfall. You decide. And like any good timekeeper, Moray didn't operate alone. It was part of a network, a web of sacred sites, each one attuned to the sun, the moon, the stars, and especially the water, because just below the terraces, the soil is laced with hidden aqueducts. Not flashy, not dramatic, just constant, careful. They guide moisture through layers of gravel and sand, keeping the roots just thirsty enough to grow strong. Hydration with a strategy. Historians still argue whether Moray functioned primarily as a timekeeper, a research lab, or a ceremonial theater. Maybe it was all three, strict codes. Maybe the Inca didn't divide the sacred from the scientific the way we like to do now. Maybe their version of a calendar looked like a spiral and hummed when you stood in the middle. You step lightly down the terraces, one by one, feeling the shift in the air with each descent. Warmer above, crisper below, a gradient of seasons stacked like a sky layer cake. By the time you reach the bottom, you feel like you've slipped between worlds. You pause there, at the heart of the spiral. The earth cradles you like a bowl. The stars stretch overhead, quiet but watchful. And for a moment there's no up, no down. Just circles. Time turning softly in the dirt. Now here's something you won't read on a postcard. Some Andine mystics believe the terraces are not just agricultural tools, but spiritual tuning forks. They claim each layer resonates with a different human emotion. Joy, grief, hope, longing. The deeper you go, the closer you come to whatever it is you've forgotten. You sit for a moment and listen. Did the Incas actually tune these terraces to match vibrations of the soul? Historians smile politely and jot down unverified. But you feel it. That strange, cello, deep hum in your ribs, that nudge towards stillness. And because time here is fluid, the memory comes unexpectedly a festival. You're standing up on the rim now. Yes, just go with it. And dancers swirl below in rainbow robes. They form spirals with their steps, matching the shape of the terraces. Drums echo from the slopes. The beat is steady, like a heartbeat in your ears. They're dancing the hours, the seasons, the harvest. They're dancing time. The music fades. The dream dissolves. And you begin the slow climb upward, each terrace lifting you toward the stars again. The night is cooler now, but the air smells faintly of herbs. Perhaps someone was burning coca leaves nearby. Or perhaps the earth itself wears perfume when it's pleased. And before you leave, look back once more. That's not a crater. That's not a lab. That's not a footprint. That's a clock that breathes. And you were inside it. You leave Moray's spiral behind. But its echo stays with you, like a secret hum beneath your skin. Now the night is deepening, the stars brightening, and you find yourself moving toward a quieter kind of time. One measured not by stone or sun, but by water flowing, dripping, and sometimes roaring through channels carved with patience and devotion. Welcome to the incredible world of the Incan water clocks. The Qualco's of time. You probably think of clocks as machines with hands or digital numbers flashing in neon. But the Incas, their clocks had no ticking gears or chiming bells. Instead, they used water, flowing water, slow, steady, eternal water. Here's a mainstream fact for you. The Inca developed what we call water clocks, or clepsydras, which measured time by how long it took for water to drip from one vessel to another. This wasn't just some lazy, makeshift timer for cooking. It was a sophisticated system used for everything from ritual timing to agricultural scheduling. Time was quite literally measured in drops. Now, picture this: a darkened stone chamber where priests watch carefully as water trickles in a thin, steady stream. The soft drip, drip, drip fills the silence. Each drop marks a passage, a moment, a decision. The air smells faintly of moss and earth. Outside, the empire hums on, but here, time is slow and deliberate. But here's your quirky tidbit. Some water clocks were said to be infused with special herbs or flowers to alter the flow of water, making it slower or faster depending on the desired measurement. Imagine adding a splash of chamomile to your clock to make time relax a bit. The idea sounds almost like alchemy, doesn't it? A liquid time potion. Historians still argue whether these herbal infusions were practical adjustments or symbolic gestures meant to invoke the spirits of water and time. Either way, strict codes. It shows how deeply intertwined the natural world was with Incan technology and ritual. As you wander through the valleys, you begin to notice the irrigation canals, the lifelines of Incan agriculture. These aren't just watering systems. They're timekeepers too. The flow of water tells farmers when to plant and when to harvest, when to prepare for the dry season, and when to celebrate. The Incas believed water was a living entity, Mama Yuna or Mother Water, and they treated it like family. Sacred family, strict codes. The timing of water's arrival in the fields was a cosmic message, and missing that message could mean famine. You can almost hear the distant roar of a waterfall now. Imagine the priests standing by, eyes focused, codes, listening to the rhythm of the stream as though it were a heartbeat. The sound guides their prayers, their decisions, their sense of order. Water clocks don't just keep time. They keep life flowing. Here's another strange fact. Some scholars suggest that Incan water clocks also acted as a form of early political control. By controlling the flow of water, rulers could regulate the timing of work, ceremonies, and even justice. Water was power. Time was power. And in the hands of the right people, both were tools to keep an empire humming. And the debate continues: were these clocks purely practical, or were they also spiritual? Were they watchers, or were they prayers? The line blurs in the misty Andes. So as you listen to the drip, drip of water in your mind, remember this: you're not just hearing the past. You're hearing a world that moved at the pace of a drop of water. Slow, steady, inevitable. Time without ticking. The water's rhythm still sings softly in your ears as you wander onward, the night air crisp with the scent of earth, and stone warmed by the day. Now you're entering a different kind of timekeeper, one carved from rock and shadow, where water doesn't just measure hours, it sculpts memory and meaning. This is Inti. The name means hitching post of the sun, and standing before one, you feel as if the sky itself has been tethered to the earth. It's a stone, yes, but also a celestial anchor, a knot in the fabric of time. Mainstream fact: Inti stones were carved by the Incas at strategic locations to mark solstices and equinoxes, when the sun reached its highest or lowest point. Strict code: stone's shadow would disappear or align perfectly with carved grooves. It was like the world pressing pause for a moment, holding its breath to mark the passage of a year. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Strict codes: some Inti stones are said to have been designed so precisely that when you touch them at certain times, you can feel a subtle vibration, almost like the stone is alive, humming with cosmic energy. Visitors to Machu Picchu often report a strange sense of calm or even dizziness standing beside it. Coincidence? You decide. Historians still argue whether this sensation was caused by magnetic minerals in the rock, or if it's a kind of ancient placebo effect, a spiritual response to the ritual significance of the site. Either way, it adds a mysterious pulse to the stone's silent watch. You trace your fingers lightly along the grooves, imagining the priests of old performing ceremonies here, offering lamas, chanting to the sun, tethering the fiery orb's path so the world wouldn't drift off its axis. You almost hear the crackle of fire and the murmur of prayers carried by the wind. But Intihuatana wasn't just about astronomy. it was a political symbol too, a reminder that the Inca emperor, the Sapa Inca, held the power to bind time and space, to control the cycles of nature and society alike. The stone held time, but it also held people's trust. Because when you believe time is tied to a sacred object, you treat that object with reverence and follow its rhythms. Here's another fascinating detail. The Inca sometimes moved these stones from one place to another, believing that their power would follow. Imagine a giant cosmic chess game, with Intihuatana stones as the pieces that shift power across the empire. The scholarly debate goes further. Some suggest that these stones may have been connected to a network of sacred sites across the Andes, a kind of spiritual GPS guiding travelers, rulers, and priests alike. Were they practical markers or parts of a larger, mystical map? Historians haven't yet settled the question. You step back and look up. The sun is a slow, golden wheel dipping closer to the horizon. Your shadow stretches long and thin, caught briefly in the carved lines of the Intihuatana. For a heartbeat, time feels tethered, balanced between earth and sky. And then the shadow shifts, and time begins to flow again. You follow the soft murmurs of water flowing and trickling, your footsteps falling quietly onto the ancient stones, worn smooth by centuries of hands and feet, prayers and pilgrimages. The air feels cooler now, thick with the scent of moss and earth, as you approach a place where time bends not just by sun and shadow, but by the steady drip and fill of water itself. The Incas weren't just masters of mountains, they were masters of control. Especially control over water, that precious, slippery element that both gave and took away life. And in their hands, water became a clock that didn't tick, but whispered. Mainstream fact: the Inca water clocks, known as quippus in some contexts, but more precisely water clocks or gnomons, were often simple yet ingenious devices. Ceramic vessels or stone basins that filled or emptied at measured rates, marking the passage of hours or important rituals. Now here's a quirky tidbit. One type of Inca wartok was called a hookah, a sacred vessel that could measure time through the steady drip of water, sometimes used during rituals to know when to start or end ceremonies. The steady drip also served as a calming, hypnotic sound, strict codes like nature's own metronome, perfect for setting the rhythm of the day or night, or simply lulling you towards sleep. Historians still argue whether these water clocks were widely used or reserved only for elite priests and the emperor's court. Some think they were more symbolic, ritual devices than practical timekeepers. You can imagine it a sacred hourglass of water, quietly measuring moments. As the empire's pulse throbbed in the high Andes, you cup your hands and splash the cool water to your face, feeling the chill and the life it brings. You almost expect the clock's rhythm to sync with your own heartbeat, a quiet reminder that time isn't just numbers on a page, but moments lived and felt. There's something poetic about measuring time by water, liquid, flowing, never quite the same twice. The Incas understood this better than most, living where mountains captured clouds and streams could vanish into stone. Their clocks didn't tick, but they taught patience and harmony with the world's slow, steady pulse. Picture an Inca priest watching the slow fill of a water clock, waiting for just the right moment to call the next ceremony. It's a quiet power, less flashy than a sundial's sharp shadow, but perhaps deeper, rooted in nature's own rhythm. And if you listen closely, you might hear the gentle drip, drip, drip of history flowing through time. The water clock's gentle drip leads you onward, deeper into the heart of Inca timekeeping mysteries. You step into a clearing where the sun filters through high branches, casting dappled patterns on a smooth stone slab. An ancient sundial, but not quite the kind you'd expect. This is a gnomon, a simple stick or pillar that casts shadows to mark the hours. But the Inca gnomons were more than just clocks. They were tied into their cosmology and agriculture, guiding not just daily life but the rhythms of planting and harvesting, ceremonies, and celestial events. Mainstream fact: strict codes. The Incas used gnomons as part of their timekeeping system, carefully aligned with the sun's path to mark solstices and equinoxes. critical markers in their agricultural calendar. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some gnomons were said to be used to predict rain or drought based on the length and sharpness of their shadows. Almost like ancient weather apps, powered by a bit of superstition and a lot of careful observation. You can imagine farmers squinting at shadows, hoping for a good harvest. Historians still argue whether these devices were standardized the empire or varied wildly from one region to another. Some say the knowledge was shared orally, passed down by specialists who guarded the secrets like treasure. You lean down to trace the worn carvings on the stone. A calendar encoded in grooves and lines, more poetic than precise, yet so vital to the rhythm of Inca life. It's a reminder that timekeeping isn't just science, it's storytelling, a way to connect with the earth and sky. Imagine the feeling of standing here, centuries ago, the sun slowly moving, shadows stretching and shrinking, strodes, and the world alive with anticipation for the next season's change. And maybe, just maybe, the sun's warmth is reminding you to slow down. Time isn't just about deadlines, it's about seasons, cycles, and those quiet moments in between. You wander farther, the sound of distant rivers blending with the whisper of leaves overhead, until you reach a place where the earth seems to hum with quiet energy. Here, the Incas practiced something that feels downright magical compared to our ticking digital clocks. They read time in the stars. This is the realm of Sikhs. Lines stretching out from Cusco, the empire's heart, like invisible threads connecting sacred places, temples, and shrines. Along these Sikhs, astronomical markers helped track celestial movements and the passing of time in a way that's as much spiritual as it is practical. Mainstream fact, the Incas used Sikhs for astronomical observations, aligning them with solstices, star risings, and other celestial events to plan agricultural activities and religious festivals. A quirky tidbit, some Sikhs were also paths for processions of priests and nobles, almost like divine highways where the movements of people mirrored the movements of the cosmos. Imagine a parade timed to the stars, with costumes glinting in the moonlight, a celestial dance across Earth. Historians still argue whether these Sikhs were purely functional, spiritual, or a blend of both. Some see them as a kind of sacred geography that encoded Inca history and myth in the landscape itself. You run your fingers over a smooth stone marking a Sikh, feeling the cool surface worn by centuries of hands. Time here isn't counted by seconds but by the slow, majestic dance of planets and stars overhead. It's humbling, in a way, to realize that the Incas thought about time as a living, breathing thing, woven into their land, their rituals, their stories. No surprise that they could command armies and build empires when their sense of time was as vast and deep as the night sky. As you stand quietly, you imagine the priests of Cusco looking up, eyes scanning the stars, reading secrets written in light and shadow, all to keep the empire turning in harmony with the universe. The air cools and thickens with the scent of wet stone and pine as you step closer to the edge of the empire's great reservoir systems. Ingenious feats of engineering that seem almost otherworldly for their time. These waterworks, intricately carved and perfectly leveled, channeled streams into terraces and fields with such precision that crops thrived even in the steepest Andes slopes. Mainstream fact, the Incas built extensive aqueducts and reservoirs, such as those at Tapan and Moray, to irrigate their fields and support large populations. Now, here's the quirky part. Some terraces were shaped like giant amphitheaters, possibly designed to enhance sound and amplify ritual chants. Imagine standing on a terrace, your voice bouncing across the hills, carried by the architecture itself. Was this just practical farming, or a secret stage for celestial communication codes? Historians still argue whether terraces like Moray were purely agricultural experiments or also served ritualistic purposes tied to Inca cosmology. You follow a narrow stone canal, water murmuring gently as it slips through ancient channels, polished smooth by centuries of flow. There's a rhythm here. Steady, strict codes, unhurried, as if the water itself measures time without ever needing a clock. Codes, It's no wonder the Incas didn't need ticking clocks when their very landscape was a calendar, their fields a symphony of seasons and cycles. As you linger, you sense how deep lie these queens and emperors understood time. Not as something to be forced or conquered, but something to be lived with, shaped around strict codes. The perfumed crowns of those warrior queens were more than decoration. They were symbols of harmony, power, and the delicate balance between human will and nature's quiet, eternal flow. And with that, you prepare to step back from the reservoir's edge, codes, the soft murmur of water bidding you a gentle farewell, reminding you that time is both fluid and enduring. Strict codes. You find yourself walking down a winding path lined with blooming wildflowers, the sweet scent mingling with the crisp mountain air as twilight slips softly over the hills. The sun's last rays cast a golden glow on the ancient stones, warming them gently, as if whispering stories to anyone who'll listen. Remember the perfumed crowns of those fierce Ethiopian queens. Tonight, they seem to shimmer in this fading light, symbols of a legacy woven through centuries. Powerful, fragrant, and quietly enduring. Historians still argue whether these queens ruled directly or shared power through complex councils. But one thing is clear: their influence shaped the course of history in ways both seen and unseen. You settle onto a smooth rock, feeling the cool earth beneath you. The world around slows, the rush of modern life feels miles away. In this moment, you become part of a timeless story where water flows without ticking. Crowns carry scents of strength, and time is measured in harmony with the earth itself. There's something soothing about this knowledge. It's not about rushing or conquering, but about feeling the rhythm beneath your feet, the pulse of history in every breath. As the stars begin to twinkle above, you close your eyes briefly, letting the soft hum of the night and the distant murmur of ancient waters lull you deeper into calm. Let your thoughts drift with the gentle flow of those Incan water clocks. Silent, steady, eternal. The world may turn fast outside your window, but here, tonight, time moves with grace. You breathe in that quiet power, and with it you slip slowly into dreams, wrapped in stories whispered across the ages. Slow your breath. Feel the steady beat of your heart matching the rhythm of ancient waters. The cool mountain air brushes softly against your skin, a gentle reminder that time, like water, flows endlessly, carrying stories, memories, and dreams. There is no rush here, only calm. Let your mind drift through the hills and terraces, the silent canals carving paths beneath the stars. Your eyelids grow heavier, the world softening around you, and you sink deeper into a peaceful sleep, cradled by the whispers of queens and rivers, the scent of perfumed crowns fading gently into the night. You are safe. You are part of something vast and enduring. Sleep now, and let these timeless tales carry you through the night.